I'm Jim McLennan, the editor, the old editor of Tennis1.com. Let's pursue something called the role of the leading elbow. And I think during baseball season we see all this throwing. And although coaches don't agree about much anymore, there's an idea that the serve may have something in common with the throw. So let me throw one over the cameraman's head. I won't hit him at all. And a thrower is having what I would call a leading elbow, where the elbow leads in front of the hand. And even with children, I'll ask them whether throwing is pushing, elbows behind the hand, or pulling. And hopefully they come to the idea that it's pulling. Let me throw another one over the camera's head. You could even say that what I did was my shoulders were pulling the arm and the arm was pulling the elbow, and that's that chain, the kinetic chain. Now, if I throw in this direction, I'll show you something unusual. I'm going to put the elbow in front, and I'll just give you a reference point of where my forearm is. And I'm going to throw the ball, and you see the elbow go backwards. I'll do it again. And I'm not sure that this is clearly understood, and I'm not making anything up. But when somebody throws normally, that same action happens, but you see it less clearly because of the follow-through mechanism. But my elbow did the same thing, it's just the arm kept moving. And so what I want to develop is some ideas about the serve and whether or not you have what's called a leading elbow, and whether or not if the elbow reverses course, it does something to snap the racket. And this was the secret that Pete Sampras knew. This is the secret that Serena knows. And this could be the secret that might really change how you approach the serve in the game of tennis. So let's take this further about the serve. If the serve is somewhat of a throwing motion, then the question is, are we throwing forward? And what direction are we throwing? And what I want to try to show is that I'm going to throw up. Doug on our site calls it a vertical throw, and that's just fine with me. But where I'm not trying to propel the racket this way, but rather that way. And what I'd like you to see is that when I threw it up, I ran out of arm, meaning the arm more or less came to a stop. And my view is that's how you set up the whip on a serve. If there's a deceleration in the hand, the next element has to accept all the energy, and so throwing or swinging up is unlocking the serve, I think, but it still has to do with this elbow and how it reverses itself. So if you're with me on pulling, if you're with me on the leading elbow, if you're with me on how the elbow reverses itself, and now you're throwing up, now I want to show you something about what's called forearm rotation. And please don't think this is a long story. I think it will all fit together very nicely. So this drill is courtesy of Chet Murphy, who was our tennis coach at UC Berkeley in 1969. He had been there before, but that was when I met him. And he would show an exercise where if my forearm is exactly parallel to the net and the racket's in line with the forearm, I don't get much leverage. But if I put the racket exactly at right angles to the forearm, I get a lot of leverage. And if you talk about this elbow, the more you do it, you'll feel your elbow actually pops backwards to do it. And so when you're dealing with the role of the elbow and what it ultimately does to the hand and then the racket, if you experiment with this drill, you might start to find that if you serve that way, you'd get one hell of a lot of pop. Sorry to use the word hell, but to me, this elbow that you're learning to use is leading and reversing course, and that reverse of course brings the racket head through. And I think this was really what Sampras knew, and this is something I'm able to teach to a lot of our kids, some of our adults. Many are skeptical and think, gee, I don't know. But I want you to believe that if you throw and the elbow reverses course, you could do the same thing on the serve where the elbow would reverse course and it's the racket that snaps through. And those that tell you to put your weight against the ball when serving, you could ask them, am I hitting it with my body or my racket? And I think at the end of the day, it's all about what you can do and add to the momentum and speed of the racket.